On Sunday, a memorial service will be held to remember the victims of a school trip to Scandinavia, which ended in tragedy 50 years ago this week.
Now, someone Samantha knows quite well, Larry Lamb, has the sad tale of the Croydon schoolboys whose adventure turned into a disaster.
Heads you win, tails you lose. Sometimes a life can turn on the flip of a penny.
Two boys wanted the last seat in the plane and a coin was tossed for it. My brother called heads and won. But he didn't, he lost.
All of a sudden, 8 good friends weren't there and weren't there to share whatever your life was going to be after that.
All the boys came from here, the Lanfranc school. For many, it was their first time on a plane. For many, the first trip abroad, so the excitement must have been at fever pitch as they set off on an adventure trip to Stavanger, on the coast of Norway.
50 years ago, Quentin Green thought he was a lucky lad. It wasn't often that boys like him got on planes to go to exotic places. He'd won the toss and got the last seat.
1961, a good year to be young. Beatlemania was round the corner, Ricky Nelson would do Mean Time. Happy days. The Lanfranc School for Boys was in Croydon. 34 of them got on the plane. None of them came back. Rosalind Jones was Quentin's sister. She was 15 when he left on that summer day in the 60s.
When he came to say goodbye to me that morning, for some crazy reason, a voice came into my head which wanted me to say, look, I'll never see you again, give me a kiss goodbye. I couldn't believe it, so I changed it to, I may never see you again. So he just gave me a peck in the cheek and he was gone.
So what had happened over there in Norway?
The plane was flying straight to Solar Airport and everything was going according to schedule. It was being talked down by the air traffic control and it had flown over Solar and it should have turned around and come back in the normal approach. But it didn't. It flew eastwards instead into the mountains where it crashed.
The rescue effort was led by the Norwegian Red Cross. It was them who set about the grim task of combing the scene. Back in Croydon, desperate families waited anxiously for news. When it came, their worst fears were confirmed. There were no survivors. Grieving families demanded answers, but none came.
It looked to some parents like it was a whitewash. It wasn't a whitewash, but they just couldn't say what had caused it.
Official cause of the accident? Deviation from the prescribed flight path for reasons unknown. The boys were brought back here a few days later. Dozens of coffins, all made of Norwegian wood, and they're all laid out here in the school assembly hall.
Even now, half a century on, some of their classmates still live with the guilt of escaping events on that mountainside.
You were the head boy, yeah?
I was head boy in that last year, yes, before the crash happened.
And, I mean, how come, wouldn't it have been normal that you would have gone on the trip, or?
I'd been on the trip to Switzerland the year before, and my parents really couldn't afford it. We did debate that, so I didn't go, which I think I was pretty lucky, looking back on that.
A mass grave was laid out in the cemetery near the school, and in the weeks that followed, tens of thousands of people paid their respects. As for the aircraft, the Vickers Vikings days were numbered. Within a few years, they were history.
50 years later, and two communities on either side of the North Sea are united in their grief at what happened. At the time, it was Norway's worst aviation disaster.
Their memory became one of the drivers in my life. And I've gone on to lead a very full life, and I'm very lucky for that. And looking back, it's something I had that the Lanfranc boys didn't.
And on Sunday, the official civic service of remembrance will be held in Croydon Minster at 3 p.m. And there's also an exhibition in the Museum of Croydon until the 17th of September.
And the story there beautifully told by Larry, who you've worked with.